Logan Grant's seemingly perfect life unravels when he discovers his wife, Alyssa, is having an affair with a wealthy businessman, Nathan Ralston. What begins as a betrayal spirals into a tangled web of fraud, deception, and criminal conspiracies, leaving Logan blindsided by the depth of Alyssa's lies. As he digs deeper, shocking truths emerge, exposing hidden accounts, offshore transfers, and dangerous connections. With mounting tension and betrayal at every turn, Logan faces impossible choices that will test his trust, morals, and sanity. Was Alyssa a victim or a master manipulator? The answers will leave viewers furious and craving justice. Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. We're diving into another jaw-dropping story today, a tale of love, betrayal, and secrets so deep they'll leave you questioning who you can really trust. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and let's get started. Logan Grant believed in order. From the neat stacks of files on his office desk to the color-coded labels in his kitchen pantry, everything had its place. At 38, Logan wasn't just an attorney. He was the guy everyone in Clearview, Washington, trusted to keep secrets buried. But secrets, as Logan was about to learn, had a funny way of surfacing. It all started with a phone call, a short one. 9 words, delivered with enough weight to make Logan's knees buckle. "Mr. Grant, your wife is having an affair." Logan stared at his phone long after the call ended, the words echoing in his head. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk. Alyssa, his wife of 9 years, smiling against the backdrop of their honeymoon in Maui. Her brown eyes sparkled like they always had, but now he wondered how much of that sparkle was real. At home that night, Alyssa was already asleep, or pretending to be. Logan sat on the edge of the bed, listening to her breathing. Steady calm. Not a hint of guilt. Was it possible? Could the woman who once spent hours baking cookies for his office staff really be capable of something so destructive? He didn't want to believe it, but doubts had a way of spreading, and Logan couldn't shake the feeling that his world had already begun to crack. The next morning, Logan did what any self-respecting lawyer would do. He gathered evidence. Alyssa's phone sat charging on the kitchen counter, unguarded. He hesitated for only a second before unlocking it with the passcode he'd memorized years ago. No suspicious texts, no missed calls, nothing unusual. Maybe it was all a mistake, a cruel prank by someone with too much time on their hands. But then he opened her email. One message caught his eye. "Friday, same time, same place. Can't wait. N." Logan's chest tightened. He didn't recognize the sender, but he didn't need to. The casual tone, the lack of details, it reeked of an affair. He could have confronted her right then, demanded answers. But Logan wasn't that kind of man. He needed proof, undeniable, irrefutable proof, before he acted. Logan spent the rest of the week observing Alyssa. He watched the way she lingered over her makeup in the mornings, smoothing her hair more carefully than usual. She'd started wearing perfume again, the expensive kind she hadn't touched since their anniversary 2 years ago. He even followed her once she said she was meeting a friend for coffee, but Logan trailed her to a hotel on the other side of town. She stayed there for 2 hours, emerging with flushed cheeks and a smile he hadn't seen in months. By Friday, Logan's worst fears felt confirmed, but instead of confronting her, he made another choice. He hired Derek Moss, a private investigator who came highly recommended. Discreet, efficient, and ruthless when it came to uncovering lies. Derek's first report arrived Sunday night. Subject seen entering Suite 214 at Harbor Crest Hotel. Male companion arrived 10 minutes later, left together after 1 hour. Attached were photos, Alyssa holding the arm of a man Logan didn't recognize. Tall, blonde, wearing a tailored suit that screamed money. Logan stared at the images until his vision blurred. He had the proof he wanted, but instead of relief, all he felt was rage. Monday morning, Logan's assistant, Emily Reed, knocked on his office door. She hesitated before stepping inside. "Everything okay, boss?" Logan glanced up from his desk, startled. "What? You've been staring at those papers for half an hour." Emily was sharp. Too sharp sometimes. She'd been with him for 5 years, and if anyone could sense when something was off, it was her. "I'm fine," he lied. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Instead, she handed him the day's schedule and quietly closed the door behind her. Logan couldn't focus his work. The thing that usually grounded him felt meaningless now. How could he focus on depositions when his own marriage was crumbling? That evening, he finally worked up the courage to confront Alyssa. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. When Logan dropped the photos in front of her, she didn't even flinch. "You've been spying on me?" Her voice was calm, but her eyes darted to the door, like she was already planning an escape. "Don't turn this on me, Alyssa," Logan snapped. "Who is he?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up the photos, studying them like they belonged to someone else. "His name is Nathan," she said finally. "We met at the gym." Logan's stomach twisted. And? And it's not what you think. But it was the hesitation in her voice, the guilt flickering behind her eyes. It was everything he feared. "What do you want, Alyssa?" His voice was quieter now, almost pleading. "Is this about money, boredom, what?" Her expression softened for just a second before hardening again. "I don't know." The answer hit him harder than he expected. She didn't even have a reason, just emptiness. "I'll fix this," Logan said, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince. But Alyssa didn't look convinced. She stood, brushing past him without another word. The following week was hell. Logan threw himself into work, trying to drown out the chaos at home, Emily noticed. Of course, she started bringing him coffee without asking, and gently reminding him about deadlines. "Still fine?" she asked one afternoon, clearly not buying his earlier answer. He almost told her the truth. Almost. But instead he shook his head. "I'll figure it out." But figuring it out meant digging deeper. He asked Derek for more details, and what he uncovered made his blood run cold. Nathan wasn't just some random guy Alyssa met at the gym. He was Nathan Ralston, CEO of a multi-million-dollar real estate firm, and according to Derek, he had a reputation for preying on vulnerable women. The kicker: Nathan had recently purchased a property just outside of town, under Alyssa's name. Logan couldn't believe it. She was planning a future with this man, without him. And that's when Logan stopped feeling like the victim. He wasn't just going to confront Alyssa this time, he was going to destroy her. Logan sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white. He stared at the newly printed deed Derek had uncovered, Nathan Ralston's signature, right next to Alyssa's. The address wasn't some random property either. It was a cozy lakeside home, the kind of place couples bought when they were ready to start over, and Alyssa had signed for it 3 weeks ago. Logan's stomach churned as he replayed every moment they'd shared in the past month. The stolen glances at her phone, the sudden excuses to work late, the lingering scent of cologne he didn't own. She was already planning her escape. She'd left him in every way, except officially. But Logan wasn't going to let her walk away that easily. Derek's phone buzzed, just as Logan stepped out of his car. "I'm outside the property," Derek said. "You're going to want to see this." Logan arrived 10 minutes later. The house looked as picturesque as the listing described: white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a dock that stretched out onto the lake. But Derek wasn't admiring the scenery. He was crouched near the side window, camera in hand. "They're inside," Derek said without looking up. "Him, her, and about a dozen boxes." Logan's pulse quickened. "They're moving in?" "Looks like it." Logan's jaw tightened. Inside, Alyssa laughed. The sound drifted out through the slightly open window, light and carefree, completely unlike the strained, distant tone she used at home. Derek lowered the camera. "You sure you don't want to go in there and end this now?" Logan shook his head. "Not yet." It wasn't enough to catch her in the act. He needed more. He needed to make sure when he took her down, there'd be no coming back. By the end of the week, Logan's plan was in motion. First, he pulled financial records from their joint accounts. Alyssa had already moved over $20,000 into a private account. Logan froze it. Then he met with his lawyer. He didn't tell Alyssa he'd filed for separation. Not yet. Instead, he left the papers in his briefcase, waiting for the right moment. But the real weapon came from Derek. "She's been covering for him," Derek said, sliding over a manila folder. "Ralston's company is under investigation. Tax fraud, wire transfers, offshore accounts, the works." Logan opened the folder and stared at the evidence. Paper trails, fake companies, and emails Alyssa had sent from their shared laptop. "She's involved," Logan said, his voice low. "Deeply." Logan leaned back, exhaling slowly. "They think they're untouchable," Derek added. "You could prove otherwise." That night Logan went home earlier than usual. Alyssa was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Long day?" she asked, her tone as casual as ever. He nodded. "You?" "Exhausting," she said, leaning against the counter. "I swear, sometimes I don't even know why I bother." Logan forced a smile. "Maybe you don't have to." She paused, glass halfway to her lips. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before he could answer, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it quickly, then turned it face down. Logan let it slide. For now. The next day, Logan visited Nathan's office. Nathan Ralston looked every bit the confident CEO, pressed suit, designer watch, and the kind of grin that made people want to punch him. "Logan Grant." Nathan stood, extending a hand Logan ignored. "We need to talk." Nathan's smile faltered just slightly. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "You know my wife." The silence hung heavy between them before Nathan finally leaned back in his chair. "Look, I don't know what Alyssa told you, but she didn't tell me anything. I figured it out myself." Nathan tried to interrupt, but Logan cut him off. "You're in over your head," Logan said, pulling out the folder Derek had given him. "Tax fraud, money laundering, felony charges." Nathan's face paled. "You dragged my wife into this mess, and now I'm giving you a choice." Nathan swallowed. "Which is?" "You walk away from her, from this house, from this entire situation, or I take this folder straight to the authorities." Nathan's jaw clenched. "And if I don't?" Logan leaned in. "Then you'll be explaining to the FBI why half your assets are under Alyssa's name." 2 days later, Alyssa came home to an empty house. Logan had packed up everything that was his and left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter. When she called, he didn't answer. When she texted, he ignored it. Instead, he sat in Derek's office, watching the footage they'd compiled. Alyssa arguing with Nathan in the parking lot. Her signature on the fraudulent documents. Her panicked expression when Nathan finally realized the walls were closing in. It was over, but Logan wasn't done. Nathan's arrest made the news that weekend. The story was everywhere. Shady deals, corporate fraud, and a secret relationship with the wife of a prominent attorney. Reporters swarmed their neighborhood, asking questions Logan refused to answer. Alyssa, on the other hand, had plenty to say. "I didn't know what he was doing," she sobbed during a phone call. "I thought he loved me." Logan almost laughed. "Don't contact me again," he said, before hanging up. The divorce was finalized in record time. Alyssa's accounts were frozen. Nathan was facing 15 years in prison, and Logan walked away with everything, including the satisfaction of knowing he'd turned their betrayal into their downfall. But even after it was all over, Logan couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in him. The man who once built his life around order and trust now saw the world differently, and he wasn't sure if that was a good thing. If you're still here, thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Did Logan go too far, or did Alyssa get what she deserved? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Logan stood in the dimly lit hallway of his law office, staring out the window as the city lights flickered below. Nathan was in custody. Alyssa's accounts were frozen, and the divorce papers had been served. It should have been over, but it wasn't. Logan's phone buzzed. It was Derek. "We have a problem," Derek said. "Alyssa's lawyer just filed an emergency motion to unfreeze her assets." Logan clenched his jaw. "On what grounds?" "She's claiming she didn't know about Nathan's fraud and that you're using the frozen funds to punish her." Logan paced the room, his mind racing. "She's playing the victim." "Not just the victim," Derek said. "She's spinning this as emotional abuse, claimed you were controlling, paranoid, and manipulative throughout the marriage." Logan's grip on the phone tightened. "Are you telling me she's turning this around on me?" "It gets worse," Derek said. "Nathan made bail." Logan stopped. "What?" "Apparently one of his investors posted it. He's out, and guess who picked him up?" Logan didn't need to guess. The next day, Logan sat in the courthouse lobby, waiting for the hearing to begin. Across the room, Alyssa sat with Nathan, her hand resting comfortably in his. She wouldn't even look at Logan. When the judge finally called the case, Alyssa's lawyer painted a vivid picture of emotional manipulation and control, claiming Logan's actions were part of a calculated effort to destroy her life. Logan wanted to argue, wanted to stand up and tell the court about the lies, the fraud, the betrayal, but he knew better than to react emotionally. Instead, he let his lawyer handle the counter-arguments, calmly presenting the evidence Derek had gathered. Emails, bank transfers, surveillance footage. By the end of the hearing, the judge ruled against Alyssa, keeping the accounts frozen and rejecting her request for spousal support. Nathan stormed out of the courtroom before the judge even finished speaking, leaving Alyssa behind. For the first time, Logan saw something crack in her carefully composed expression. Fear. But fear of what? Later that night, Derek called again. "I followed Nathan after court," Derek said. "He drove straight to an abandoned warehouse outside town." "And?" "Let's just say he wasn't there for a casual meeting." Derek emailed Logan photos, Nathan arguing with two men who looked like they belonged in a mob movie. One of them shoved Nathan against the hood of his car, while the other rifled through his trunk. "Looks like our boy owes money," Derek said. Logan leaned back in his chair, the pieces finally starting to fit together. Nathan wasn't just a fraud, he was desperate, and desperate people made dangerous decisions. The following morning, Logan woke to a knock on his door. It was Alyssa. Her hair was a mess, and her eyes were red from crying. "Please," she said. "I need to talk to you." Logan didn't let her inside. "I don't have anything to say to you. It's not about us." She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "It's about Nathan." Logan hesitated. "What about him?" She stepped closer. "He's in trouble. Big trouble. He borrowed money to keep his company afloat, but now it's all falling apart. They're coming after him, and me." Logan folded his arms. "Why should I care?" "Because they threatened to come after you too." Logan met Derek at the coffee shop later that day, going over everything Alyssa had told him. "She's scared," Logan said. "But is it real?" Derek shrugged. "Hard to say. She might be playing you, or maybe she's finally realizing Nathan's not her ticket to a better life." Logan shook his head. "I don't trust her, but if these guys are as dangerous as she says, then you need to be careful." Derek slid a small recording device across the table. "Keep this on you, just in case." That night, Logan found himself outside the lakeside property Nathan had bought. The lights were off, but there was a car parked out front, one he didn't recognize. He crept closer, his heart pounding in his chest. Inside, Alyssa and Nathan were arguing. "I told you I'd handle it," Nathan snapped. "And how exactly are you going to do that?" Alyssa shot back. "You don't have any money left, Nathan. They're going to kill us." Nathan slammed his fist against the table. "Not if we leave town first." Alyssa shook her head. "And go where? With what money?" Nathan didn't answer. Instead, he stormed out of the room, leaving Alyssa sobbing at the kitchen table. Logan stepped back into the shadows, his mind racing. The next morning, Logan called Derek. "I need you to find out where Nathan's hiding his money." "Already on it," Derek said. "But you're not going to like what I found." Logan braced himself. "There's a second offshore account, one Alyssa didn't tell you about, and guess whose name is on it?" Logan's stomach dropped. "Nathan's. And Alyssa's." Logan confronted Alyssa later that day. "You lied to me," he said, holding up the bank statements. She looked genuinely panicked. "I didn't know about that account, I swear." "You expect me to believe that?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't open it. Nathan must have done it." But Logan had stopped believing her lies. Things escalated quickly after that. Nathan's investors grew impatient, showing up at the lakeside house with threats that sent Alyssa running to Logan for protection. For the first time, she looked like the woman he used to love, scared, vulnerable, and desperate for his help. But Logan couldn't shake the feeling that it was all part of her act. Derek dug deeper, uncovering more connections between Alyssa and Nathan's fraudulent business dealings. Emails showed Alyssa had signed documents and made transfers long before she claimed to know what was happening. When Logan confronted her with the evidence, she broke down completely. "I didn't think it would go this far," she sobbed. Nathan promised me everything. Security, love, a new start. I didn't know he was lying. Logan wanted to believe her, but the damage was already done. The final confrontation came at the lakeside house. Logan arrived just as Nathan was loading boxes into his car. Going somewhere? Logan asked, stepping out of the shadows. Nathan froze. Walk away, Grant, he said. This doesn't involve you. Doesn't it? Logan held up the file Derek had compiled. The bank records, the offshore accounts, the fraud. You dragged my wife into this mess, and now you're trying to disappear. Nathan's eyes darkened. And what are you going to do about it? Logan stepped closer. Make sure you don't get away with it. Nathan lunged. Logan barely dodged the punch, grabbing Nathan's arm and twisting it behind his back. You think you're untouchable? Logan hissed. Not anymore. Nathan struggled, but Logan held him down until the police arrived, called by Derek, who had been waiting nearby. Alyssa watched from the porch, tears streaming down her face. Logan, she whispered. But he didn't even look at her. Nathan was arrested on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Alyssa, despite her involvement, cooperated with authorities and avoided prison time. But her reputation and career were ruined. Logan filed for full divorce proceedings, refusing to give her a dime more than what the court ordered. He'd won, but at what cost? Thanks for sticking with this story until now. Do you think Logan was right to take things this far, or should he have let Alyssa go? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more crazy stories like this one. Logan sat in his car, parked just outside the lakeside house. The rain poured down, streaking the windshield like tiny daggers. Nathan's car was still there, headlights dimmed, but Logan wasn't looking at the driveway. He was focused on the faint glow of light from the living room window. Inside, Alyssa's shadow moved past the curtains. She wasn't alone. Logan gripped the folder in his lap, the one Derek had put together detailing every transaction, forged signature, and offshore account. This wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon. And tonight, he planned to use it. The plan was simple: confront Nathan, expose his lies, and watch his entire world come crashing down. But as Logan stepped out of the car, his gut told him this wouldn't go as smoothly as he hoped. He knocked once. No answer. The second knock was louder. The door creaked open, and Alyssa appeared, her face pale and eyes rimmed red. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Logan didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. Nathan was there, leaning against the kitchen counter with a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Well, look who decided to drop by," Nathan said, his voice dripping with mockery. Logan ignored him and turned to Alyssa. "You told me you wanted out of this mess, that you were scared, but here you are." "It's not what it looks like," Alyssa said quickly. Logan held up the folder. "Then maybe you can explain these." Nathan's smirk vanished. He set his glass down and took a step forward. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into," Nathan said, his voice low. "Actually, I do." Logan opened the folder and tossed it onto the coffee table. "Tax fraud, money laundering, offshore accounts. You've been using Alyssa to cover your tracks, and now it's over." Alyssa's breath caught. "Logan." But he wasn't done. "I've already sent copies to the authorities," Logan said, watching Nathan's face closely. "By tomorrow morning, they'll have warrants out for your arrest." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You're bluffing," Logan smiled. "Try me." For a moment, no one moved. Then Nathan lunged. Logan barely had time to react. Nathan shoved him back against the wall, knocking the breath out of his lungs. Papers from the folder scattered across the floor. Alyssa screamed. "Stop it!" she cried, grabbing Nathan's arm. But Nathan didn't stop. He grabbed Logan by the collar and slammed him into the wall again. "You think you can ruin me?" Nathan hissed. "You're nothing but a washed-up lawyer clinging to a woman who doesn't love you anymore." Logan's vision blurred, but he forced himself to stay focused. He brought his knee up, slamming it into Nathan's stomach. The bigger man staggered back, giving Logan just enough time to grab the nearest object, a glass vase, and smash it against Nathan's head. Nathan crumpled to the floor. Breathing heavily, Logan turned to Alyssa. "Call the police," he said. She hesitated. Alyssa! Logan barked. Finally, she grabbed her phone and dialed. Logan stared down at Nathan, who was groaning and clutching his head. The man who had destroyed his marriage, his trust, and nearly his life, now lay defeated at his feet. But the fight wasn't over yet. By the time the police arrived, Nathan was sitting in handcuffs, and Alyssa was wrapped in a blanket, trembling on the couch. Logan watched as the officers escorted Nathan out the door, but he couldn't shake the nagging feeling in his gut. Something didn't add up. Alyssa hadn't looked relieved when Nathan was arrested. She looked terrified. When the officers left, Logan sat across from her. "Tell me the truth," he said. "All of it." Tears streamed down Alyssa's face. "I didn't know at first," she whispered. "I thought Nathan was successful. I thought he was helping me start over. But then he started asking me to sign papers, open accounts in my name. He said it was temporary, that he just needed to move money around to avoid taxes." Logan leaned back, arms crossed. "And you believed him?" "I didn't have a choice," she said, her voice trembling. "By the time I realized what was really happening, it was too late. He threatened me, Logan. He said if I didn't go along with it, he'd ruin me. And you." Logan's jaw clenched. "So you let him drag you deeper into this mess?" "I was scared," Alyssa cried. "You have no idea what he's capable of." Logan stood, pacing the room. "You're still lying," he said finally. "You didn't stay because you were scared. You stayed because you wanted to." Alyssa's eyes widened. "No. Stop." Logan's voice cut through her protests. "You wanted the money, the house, the life he promised you, and now you're trying to play the victim to save yourself." Alyssa broke down completely, burying her face in her hands. Logan felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just emptiness. The next morning, Derek called with more news. "They're charging Nathan with multiple felonies," he said. "But get this, he's trying to cut a deal." Logan frowned. "A deal?" "Yeah, he's offering evidence against Alyssa in exchange for a reduced sentence." Logan closed his eyes. "So it's not over." "Not even close," Derek said. Later that day, Logan met with the district attorney's office to hand over the rest of the evidence. Alyssa's involvement couldn't be ignored. Too many signatures, too many transactions. She'd tried to play both sides, and now it was catching up with her. Logan watched as the DA flipped through the files, nodding grimly. "She won't walk away from this," the DA said. Logan didn't respond. Part of him wanted to feel vindicated. But the truth was, he just felt tired. Alyssa's arrest came 3 days later. She didn't fight it, didn't cry. She simply looked at Logan one last time, before being led out in handcuffs. And just like that, it was over, or so Logan thought. But betrayals this deep don't end cleanly. Stay tuned for the final chapter, where Logan faces the aftermath of everything he's lost and what he's gained. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you've enjoyed the story so far. Logan sat in the courtroom, his hands clenched into fists beneath the polished wood table. The room buzzed with tension as the judge prepared to deliver Alyssa's fate. Nathan's plea deal had already sealed his own sentence, 10 years in federal prison. But Alyssa's case wasn't as clear-cut. Her lawyers argued that she'd been manipulated, forced into compliance by Nathan's threats and emotional abuse. Logan wasn't buying it. Not after everything she'd done. Not after the offshore accounts, the forged documents, and the secret property she'd helped Nathan secure. The judge's gavel struck. "Mrs. Grant, this court finds you guilty on charges of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." Alyssa's sharp gasp pierced the air. Logan didn't flinch, but the next words hit harder than he expected. "However, given your cooperation with authorities and evidence that you were coerced, your sentence will be reduced to 5 years, with the possibility of parole in 2. Alyssa's shoulders sagged as her lawyer leaned in, whispering instructions. Logan's heart pounded. 2 years after everything? His mind flashed back to the nights he'd spent gathering evidence, to the photos of her with Nathan, laughing while Logan's life fell apart. She should have gotten more. But that wasn't the end of it. Outside the courthouse, Logan leaned against his car, letting the cold air steady him. Derek appeared at his side, handing him a manila envelope. "You're not going to like this," Derek said. Logan opened it and felt his stomach drop. Inside were recent surveillance photos. Nathan's associates, the ones who had threatened Alyssa, hanging around outside Logan's office. "Guess they're not done with her," Derek said. "Or with you." Logan closed the folder. "They're tying up loose ends." Derek nodded. "And you're one of them." The next few days passed in a blur. Logan worked late, keeping one eye on the door at all times. He even started carrying the small recording device Derek had given him, just in case things turned violent. But the real turning point came late Thursday night. Logan returned home to find his front door slightly open. The hairs on his neck stood up. He stepped inside, his hand instinctively reaching for the pepper spray he kept near the coat rack. The living room lights were on, but the house was eerily silent. And then he saw it. The papers he'd collected, bank statements, emails, photos, were scattered across the floor. The file cabinet was open, its contents dumped out. Someone had been looking for something. His phone buzzed. It was Derek. "We've got a problem," Derek said. Alyssa was attacked in jail. Logan's blood ran cold. "She's alive," Derek added quickly. "But it's bad she's asking for you." Logan didn't want to go, but something about the break-in and the timing of the attack made him feel like this wasn't over yet. When Logan arrived at the hospital, Alyssa looked worse than he expected. Her lip was split, her arm in a cast, and bruises covered her face. But she still had that look in her eyes, the one that begged for forgiveness. "I didn't know who else to call," she said softly. Logan stayed by the door, arms crossed. "What do you want, Alyssa?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I need your help." Logan almost laughed. "My help after everything you've done?" "It's not just me, Logan," she said, her voice trembling. "They think I have something Nathan hid, and if I don't give it to them, they'll come after me again, or worse." Logan shook his head. "I'm done protecting you. Please." She reached for his hand, but he stepped back. "You should have thought about this before you destroyed our marriage." Alyssa's face crumbled. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Logan's voice hardened. "Yes, you did." That night, Logan couldn't sleep. The break-in, the attack, the threats. It was too much to ignore. By morning, Derek had dug deeper into Nathan's financials and uncovered the missing piece, another offshore account, one that hadn't been listed in the original files, but this time, it wasn't in Nathan's name. It was in Alyssa's. Logan stormed into the hospital room later that day, tossing the papers onto Alyssa's lap. "You lied again." Her eyes darted over the documents, panic spreading across her face. "No, I didn't. Don't even try it," Logan snapped. "You knew about this account the whole time." "I thought it was closed," she cried. "You thought?" Logan leaned in. "Or you hoped no one would find it?" Alyssa broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. "I was scared, okay? I didn't know how to get out of it." Logan didn't flinch. "You made your bed, Alyssa. Now you have to lie in it." But it wasn't that simple. The account wasn't just a leftover piece of Nathan's scheme. It was active, and someone had accessed it within the last 48 hours. Derek traced the transfer. It led straight to one of Nathan's associates. "They're still moving money," Derek said, "and they're using Alyssa as a scapegoat." Logan exhaled slowly. He was so close to being free of this mess. But now he had no choice but to dive back in. Later that night, Logan met Derek outside the lakeside house one last time. The place was dark, abandoned, but Derek had spotted movement earlier. "They're inside," Derek whispered. Logan nodded. This wasn't about saving Alyssa anymore. This was about ending it, for good. If you're still watching, what do you think Logan should do next? Walk away, or confront the danger head-on? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one. Logan crouched behind the bushes, his breath steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. The dim glow from inside the lakeside house illuminated the two men pacing near the window. Nathan's associates, dangerous, desperate, and completely unaware that their time was running out. Derek tapped his shoulder, signaling that the back entrance was clear. "You sure about this?" Derek whispered. Logan's jaw tightened. "This ends tonight." With that, they moved. Inside, the two men argued, their voices sharp and impatient. "We should have left already," one of them snapped. "Not until we get the rest of it," the other shot back. "Nathan promised the final transfer would hit today." Logan edged closer, his eyes scanning the room for Alyssa's file, the one they'd ransacked his office looking for. There it was, sitting open on the table between them, scattered with bank records and codes. Derek nodded. It was time. Logan stepped out of the shadows. "Looking for something?" The men froze, then turned, their eyes narrowing as they took in Logan and Derek. "Who the hell are you?" "The guy who's about to end this," Logan said. The larger of the two men smirked, reaching for something beneath his jacket. Derek reacted first, pulling his gun and aiming it squarely at the man's chest. "Don't," Derek warned. The smirk vanished. "You're making a mistake," the second man said, stepping forward. "No," Logan snapped. "The mistake was thinking you could keep this going." He reached for the folder and held it up. "This is everything the authorities need to trace your accounts and tie you to Nathan's fraud. It's over." But they didn't back down. Instead, the larger man lunged at Derek. A gunshot rang out, shattering the tension. The man dropped to the floor, clutching his leg. The second man bolted for the back door, but Logan was faster. He tackled him to the ground, pinning him against the hardwood floor. "Not so fast," Logan growled. The man thrashed, but Logan didn't let go until Derek was at his side, cuffs in hand. "We're done here," Derek said, securing the man's wrists. Logan grabbed the folder, his hands trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was wearing off. By the time the police arrived, Logan and Derek had everything ready. The suspects were restrained, the evidence laid out, and the story told. Nathan's associates weren't just involved. They were the ones pulling the strings after Nathan's arrest, trying to clean up loose ends and disappear with whatever money they could salvage. Logan handed the folder to the lead detective. "This ties them to Alyssa's offshore accounts," Logan explained. The officer flipped through the pages, nodding. "This should be enough to shut them down for good." As the men were escorted out in handcuffs, Logan felt the weight lift, just slightly, but he knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, Logan visited Alyssa in the hospital one last time. She was sitting up in bed, her face pale but calmer than before. "I heard what you did," she said softly. Logan crossed his arms. "Don't thank me." Alyssa's lips trembled. "They're going to put me away, aren't they?" Logan didn't answer right away. "It's out of my hands," he said finally. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time, Logan saw something that almost resembled regret. "I never wanted it to end like this," she whispered. Logan's voice was cold. "But you let it." Alyssa wiped her eyes, but Logan didn't flinch. "You had a choice," he continued, "and you chose him. I chose wrong." Logan didn't argue. Instead, he turned to leave, pausing only long enough to say one last thing. "I hope it was worth it." The days that followed felt like a blur. The trial wrapped up quickly. Nathan's plea deal made sure of that. His associates faced longer sentences, thanks to the evidence Logan had collected. And Alyssa? She pleaded guilty to reduced charges, earning 5 years with the possibility of parole. But Logan didn't stay to see her sentencing. He left the courtroom as soon as the verdict was read, stepping outside into the cold air and breathing deeply for the first time in weeks. It was finally over, or so he thought. Derek called him later that night. "We might have a problem," Derek said, his voice tense. Logan rubbed his temples. "What now?" "One of Nathan's accounts. There's still money moving through it." Logan froze. "I thought we shut them all down." "So did I," Derek said, "but someone's still pulling strings from the inside." Logan's stomach dropped. "You think it's Alyssa?" "It's possible," Derek said, "but I don't think she's the one making the moves." "Then who?" Derek hesitated. "That's what we need to find out." Logan didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office, staring at the files spread out in front of him. The accounts, the transfers, the signatures. The pieces were all there, but something didn't add up, and then it hit him. Nathan's plea deal. What if it wasn't just about reducing his sentence? What if he was still pulling the strings, using his connections to keep the money flowing while shifting the blame onto Alyssa and his associates? Logan grabbed his phone. "Derek, I need you to track Nathan's prison records, phone calls, visitors, Everything he's not done yet. As Logan prepared for one final confrontation, he couldn't help but wonder how far Nathan was willing to go. But one thing was certain. Logan wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. If you're still with us, let us know what you think about this wild ride in the comments. Should Logan go after Nathan one more time, or let the system handle it? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to catch the next chapter. Logan stared at the surveillance logs Derek had sent over Nathan's phone calls from prison, painted a disturbing picture. Coded conversations, instructions to outside contacts, and references to cleaning up loose ends. It wasn't over. Nathan might have been behind bars, but he was still pulling strings, still playing the game. And Logan knew that if he didn't stop it now, it would only get worse. Derek's voice crackled through the phone. I traced the latest transfer. It went through an offshore shell company, but it's tied to an account managed by Nathan's old lawyer. Logan's blood ran cold. The same lawyer who negotiated his plea deal? Yep, Derek confirmed. And get this, he visited Nathan in prison 2 days ago. Logan slammed his fist against the desk. So Nathan's using his lawyer to keep the operation running. Looks that way, Derek said. But there's something else you need to know. Logan braced himself. The money isn't just disappearing into offshore accounts. It's being funneled back into Nathan's legal defense fund. He's trying to buy his way out. Logan's chest tightened. If he gets out, then everything starts again. Logan didn't hesitate. He went straight to the district attorney's office with Derek's findings. The DA, a sharp-eyed woman named Karen Doyle, listened carefully as Logan laid out the evidence. If this is true, Nathan violated his plea deal, Doyle said, flipping through the documents. We can revoke it, add more charges, and make sure he doesn't see the outside of a prison cell for decades. Logan exhaled, finally feeling a sense of control again. But, Doyle continued, we need absolute proof that Nathan orchestrated this from the inside. Without it, his lawyer can argue plausible deniability. Logan leaned forward. Then let's get the proof. Derek's plan was risky, but necessary. He set up a sting operation, posing as one of Nathan's contacts. Using burner phones and encrypted messages, Derek fed false information back to Nathan's lawyer, promising a way to recover the missing funds. Nathan took the bait. Within hours, he made another call from prison, giving specific instructions for the next transfer. Logan listened to the recording later that night, his pulse pounding. Make the transfer. No mistakes this time, Nathan's voice hissed, and tell her we're still on schedule. Logan froze. Her? Derek rewound the audio. It's Alyssa, Logan said. Derek looked up. You sure? It has to be. Logan's stomach turned. She wasn't done. The next morning, Logan drove straight to the prison to confront Alyssa. He found her in the visitation room, looking far calmer than someone facing 5 years behind bars. You lied to me, Logan said, slamming the folder onto the table. Alyssa barely flinched. What now? Logan opened the folder, revealing the evidence from Derek's sting. Nathan's still moving money, and you're helping him. Alyssa's lips pressed into a thin line. I had no choice. Logan leaned in. There's always a choice. You don't get it, Alyssa hissed. You think this is about greed, about running away with Nathan and living happily ever after? Logan said nothing, letting her unravel. They're threatening me, Logan, Nathan's people. They said if I didn't help, they'd come after me or you. Logan's anger flared. Don't use me as an excuse for your crimes. Her eyes hardened. You think you're so righteous, don't you? Sitting up there in your perfect life while I was drowning. You didn't drown, Logan snapped. You jumped in head first. Alyssa's voice cracked. And what was I supposed to do, watch you work late every night? Pretend everything was fine while we drifted further apart? Logan froze, because for the first time she sounded real. But it didn't change what she'd done. You made your bed, Logan said, his voice cold. Now lie in it. Alyssa's expression crumbled, but Logan didn't stay to watch. Derek called later that night with an update. We've got him, Derek said. Nathan's lawyer made another transfer, and we caught it in real time. The DA is already filing a motion to revoke the plea deal. Logan leaned back in his chair, relief flooding through him. But then Derek's tone shifted. There's one more thing. Logan sat up. It's Alyssa. She's flipping on Nathan. Logan's heart skipped. She what? She's cutting a deal, Derek explained, giving up everything she knows about Nathan's operation in exchange for a reduced sentence. Logan's thoughts raced. Was this another manipulation? Another way to save herself? Or was it genuine? The trial moved quickly. Nathan's plea deal was revoked, and new charges were added, this time with no chance of negotiation. But Alyssa's deal complicated things. She testified against Nathan, providing details only someone deeply involved could know. Her testimony sealed Nathan's fate, 20 years in federal prison. And yet, Logan couldn't shake the bitterness. Alyssa's sentence was reduced to 3 years, with the possibility of parole in 18 months. She had betrayed him, lied to him, and destroyed their marriage. And now, she might walk free, before Nathan even served half his time. Logan watched as Alyssa was led out of the courtroom. She paused, turning back to meet his eyes one last time. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but Logan didn't respond. 2 weeks later, Derek handed Logan the final report. "All accounts shut down," Derek said. "Nathan's done his people scattered." Logan nodded. "Good." But as Derek left, Logan stared out the window, his reflection staring back. The fight was over, but the scars remained. Thanks for watching this gripping story unfold. Do you think Logan made the right decisions, or should he have handled things differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Logan sat in his office, staring at the last document Derek had handed him, the official notice that Nathan's plea deal had been revoked. It should have felt like closure, but instead, it left a hollow ache in his chest. Nathan was done. His empire had crumbled, his allies were scattered, and Alyssa? Alyssa was still a loose thread. She was cooperating with authorities, yes, but Logan couldn't ignore the possibility that it was just another performance, a desperate attempt to stay out of prison. The worst part? It was working. Derek called later that night. "She's scheduled to testify again tomorrow," he said, "but something's off." Logan sat up. "What do you mean?" "Her lawyer filed a motion this morning. They're trying to push for parole in 12 months instead of 18. Logan's grip tightened on the phone. "You're kidding." "I wish I was." Logan paced the room, his mind racing. "She's using this testimony to buy her way out," Logan said. "Looks that way," Derek replied, "and the worst part, she might actually pull it off." The courthouse felt heavier the next day. Alyssa sat on the witness stand, calm and collected, as she laid out every detail of Nathan's operation. She spoke like someone who had nothing left to lose, but Logan knew better. This wasn't a confession, it was a performance. As the prosecutor walked her through the evidence, Logan studied her face, how she paused at all the right moments, how her voice trembled just enough to sound believable, and the jury ate it up. By the time she stepped down, Logan could already see it, the sympathy in their eyes, the quiet nods. It was working. Derek found Logan outside the courtroom, his expression dark. "She's going to get it," Derek said. "Reduced time, parole, all of it." Logan's stomach churned. She shouldn't walk away from this. Derek hesitated. "There's one more thing," Derek said carefully. "Something I didn't tell you before." Logan froze. "What is it?" Derek pulled out his phone and played a recording, one of Nathan's final calls before his arrest. "She's smart," Nathan's voice said. "Knows how to cover her tracks. She'll get out, and when she does, she'll take what's left." Logan's blood ran cold. "She's still working with him," Logan whispered. "Maybe not directly," Derek said, "but she knows more than she's admitting." Logan's hands clenched into fists. "She's not done." That night, Logan waited outside the courthouse as Alyssa left. She spotted him immediately, pausing at the bottom of the steps. "Logan." He didn't move. "I thought you'd be happy," she said quietly. "Nathan's going away for good." "You really expect me to believe this is about justice?" Her eyes narrowed. "What do you want me to say? That I screwed up, that I ruined everything? Fine. But I'm trying to fix it." Logan stepped closer, his voice low. "You're not fixing anything, you're saving yourself." Alyssa swallowed hard, but her confidence didn't waver. Maybe I am, she admitted, but at least I'm doing something. Logan shook his head. You don't get to play the hero in this story, Alyssa. I never wanted to be the hero, she snapped. I just wanted to survive. Logan stared at her, trying to find the woman he once loved, but she wasn't there anymore. The next day, Derek called with another update. They're accelerating her release hearing, Derek said. It's happening next week. Logan's heart sank. That fast? She cut another deal, Derek explained. Testified against 2 more of Nathan's contacts. Logan couldn't believe it. How does she keep getting away with this? Because she knows how to play the system, Derek said. And unless we find something new, she's going to walk free. Logan didn't sleep that night. Instead, he pored over the files again, searching for anything they might have missed. And then he found it. An email buried in Alyssa's account. It wasn't long, just a few lines. Transfer confirmed, remaining assets secured. We're ready when you are. Logan's heart pounded. The date on the email? 2 days after Nathan's arrest. Derek met Logan the next morning, scanning the email carefully. This changes everything, Derek said. She didn't just cooperate with Nathan, she helped him set up a backup plan. Logan's pulse raced. Can we trace it? Derek nodded. I already did. The account's still active, and the funds are sitting offshore. Logan exhaled sharply. This is it. This is what we need. The final showdown came during Alyssa's parole hearing. Logan sat in the back of the room, his heart hammering as Derek handed the evidence to the DA moments before the hearing began. Alyssa looked confident when she entered, dressed in a simple blouse and skirt designed to make her look harmless. But the confidence faded when the DA stood. Before we proceed, the DA said, new evidence has come to light regarding the defendant's continued involvement in financial crimes following her arrest. Alyssa's eyes darted toward Logan. He didn't look away. The DA presented the email, the account details, and the paper trail Derek had uncovered. By the time they finished, Alyssa's face was pale. Her lawyer scrambled to delay the hearing, but the judge wasn't interested. Request for early parole is denied, the judge said firmly. The defendant will serve the remainder of her sentence in full. Alyssa's shoulders slumped as the bailiff led her away. She didn't even glance at Logan. Outside, Derek clapped Logan on the back. You did it. Logan nodded, but he didn't feel like celebrating. Because in the end, no one really won. Nathan was in prison, Alyssa was too. And Logan, he was free. But at what cost? Thanks for sticking with this intense ride. Do you think Logan made the right call by exposing Alyssa? Or should he have let her go? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one. Logan sat in the corner booth of a quiet diner, stirring a cup of black coffee he didn't plan to drink. It had been 2 weeks since Alyssa's parole hearing, but the weight of it all still lingered. Nathan was locked away, his empire in ruins. Alyssa was serving out the remainder of her sentence, her web of lies finally untangled. And yet, Logan didn't feel victorious. Instead, he felt hollow. Derek slid into the booth across from him, dropping a folder on the table. Thought you might want this. Logan raised an eyebrow. What is it? Final closure. Logan hesitated before opening the folder. Inside were the latest updates. Nathan's transfer to a maximum security prison, Alyssa's official sentencing record, and the status of the offshore accounts Derek had tracked down. It's all tied up, Derek said. No loose ends. Logan closed the folder and leaned back. Feels strange, doesn't it? Derek asked. What does? Winning. Logan shook his head. This doesn't feel like winning. Later that evening, Logan returned to the lakeside house, the place where it had all started. The furniture was gone, the walls bare. It felt smaller now, emptier. But that was fitting. He walked out onto the dock, staring at the water rippling under the moonlight. This place was supposed to be their dream, a fresh start. Instead, it had become a monument to betrayal. Logan pulled the keys from his pocket and tossed them into the lake, no more looking back. Over the next few weeks, Logan focused on rebuilding his life. He poured himself into his work, taking on clients who genuinely needed help, people who reminded him that not everyone was out to deceive. Emily, his assistant, noticed the change almost immediately. "You're different," she said one afternoon. "Better or worse?" Logan asked. "Better," she said without hesitation. "More focused, stronger." Logan smiled, a real smile, the first in a long time. Derek stayed in touch, occasionally updating Logan on the aftermath of the case. "Nathan's fighting the charges," Derek said during one call, "but he's not getting out anytime soon." "And Alyssa?" "Keeping her head down. From what I hear, no appeals, no drama." Logan nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. Maybe she'd finally accepted the consequences, or maybe she was just biding her time. Either way, it wasn't his problem anymore. Months passed, and Logan started to feel normal again, or at least as close to normal as he could get. He spent less time looking over his shoulder and more time looking ahead. One night, as he was leaving the office, Emily stopped him at the door. "Dinner?" she asked casually. Logan hesitated for just a second before smiling. "Dinner." The lakeside house sold faster than Logan expected. As he signed the final paperwork, he felt the last weight lift from his shoulders. It was over. For real this time. But closure didn't mean forgetting. Logan kept the folder Derek had given him, the one with all the evidence, the accounts, the lies, not because he wanted to relive it, but because it reminded him of how far he'd come. He'd been broken, betrayed, and left to pick up the pieces. But he didn't just survive. He rebuilt. On the day Alyssa's sentence was finalized, Logan didn't go to the courthouse. Instead, he went back to the dock one last time, not to dwell on the past, but to let it go. And that's where we leave Logan, standing at the edge of the water, finally free. But what do you think? Did Logan make the right choices? Should he have given Alyssa another chance, or did she deserve everything she got? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more twists, turns, and drama just like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.